Hello and welcome back to this module on retail enterprise and operations. One of the things I hope that you did during reading week was have a good time, but also manage to have a look back at the sessions that we've already done. What we have covered so far within this module is looking at organisations, retail organisations, and where they fit within a general retail environment. We've looked at how they identify their customers, and we've also looked at how they particularly structure their business in order to make themselves profitable, both from a service point of view and a supply chain point of view. We've briefly touched on the strategic planning as well, and this today's session forms another part of that. So, just going to have a look at a section of that in terms of the overall strategy section. This one here, and with a particular view in terms looking at choosing a location, and the kind of things we'll be looking at will be how to analyze a trading area. Looking at what geographic information systems are out there, so what information is out there in terms of who's where. Looking at how you can determine the size and shape of trading areas. Looking at entering a market where there may be existing stores. Looking at some major factors, and in general thinking about the positives and negatives of a particular organisation. So what affects the catchment area that you're working with? Well, largely it's down to customer demographics. You know, how many people there are in a particular area, how old they are, specifically, what kind of incomes they have, what's the typical social makeup and social background of it. That's a key thing to consider. What we also have is thinking about what promotional activities are available there in terms of TV, radio, that type of thing. You need to look at the existing market and competition, so competitive analysis is important as part of this. You also need to think about saturation of the market and thinking about what are the ideal number of stores, not just of yours but of others as well. And maybe look at geographic weaknesses as well, and I'm thinking particularly in terms of rural and urban distribution of stores. And then there is a small thing to look at in terms of planning restrictions as well, just a minor thing. So in terms of identifying trading areas, what this website does, I recommend you having a look at it, and it's a great way of mapping where retail outlets are, particularly in this case it is supermarkets, but you can do it for all sorts of different types of supermarkets, and you can identify, you can look at it and you can have you see where the distribution of them are, distribution of these stores are. There are various different sites for trading area analysis, which is obviously a very important part of it. And some of them are run by local authorities, some of them are run by independent organisations such as Mintel, who will do a typical trading analysis and market analysis of a specific geographical area. And there are other independent commercial opportunities as well there for it. And you typically be looking to balance the local population against the potential value of that. So thinking about adding a new supermarket just on a very basic level, you have to think about the trading area of the existing supermarket. Obviously that is well established, usually, or can be well established within the marketplace. And you also have to think about where the areas are available for expansion in that. What are the factors that determine why people use that supermarket? If they're the only one, if they are the only large supermarket in the area, that's why they use it, generally speaking. However, if there are several other a couple of other large supermarkets in that particular region, what it may be is that your entry into that market can be a good source of competition, and people will see that as a good thing in terms of price reduction, etc. You also need to think about the trading area of the proposed supermarket, and how do those overlap? Is there going to be a significant overlap, or is there going to be a relatively small area that are covered by both? Think about geographic information systems. These are, and again, there's a website for you to have a look at, in terms of looking at the potential trading performance of the locations. And it talks about catchment area, as I've already done, as a way of identifying who's in what area. And you can have a look at population density, etc. within that. It's important to identify within the trading area the exact makeup of people within that, and the exact spend that there is in the local economy. What we also need to bear in mind is where there are what we might consider to be the overall trading area, as in this bounded area, there are certain segments within that. The primary trading area is obviously going to be the one that's in the most local region of the store, then a secondary one, and then particularly less so for a supermarket, but maybe more so for a specialist store. There will be a larger periphery and kind of fringe area around it. If you think about an IKEA store, there are obviously a lot fewer of them in the country, and this fringe area, the fringe area for the Warrington store, for example, will reach up to Scotland and the border. So just thinking about some examples of retail trading areas. We'll be looking mainly at city centre shopping centres, out-of-town purpose-built and out-of-town standalone hypermarkets. These are really kind of fairly self-explanatory. The city centre shopping centres are an important part of the high street economy within the country, and there is a move to regenerate many city centres in order to provide them to be a kind of shopping centre in their own right and a destination in their own right, in order where people can find everything that they're looking for. Out-of-town purpose-built have advantages mainly in terms of transport links and car parking. And standalone stores, again, it's about space and what's available, and how large a store you can build, but also about making sure that you can really create a destination. Again, the factors to consider, I just want to go back to these for the moment and just think about geographical weakness within that. So when placing a store. So if we imagine Cumbria, it seems a fairly good thing to imagine as it's, well, next door. In the middle of Cumbria, you have lots of hills, lots of lakes, very few people, or relatively speaking, very few people. And around the outside, you have where the largest bulk of the population live within it. There's a lot at the top, there's a lot at the bottom, there's some around the sides, but there's very, very little in the middle. So naturally, one of the things that you'd consider is where the key retail outlets need to be. Well, Barrow is the largest town, within it, and as such it has three large supermarkets plus two discount retailers and a whole range of things. So it's got a large Tesco, a very large Tesco, a very large Asda, it's got a Morrison's. But even a few miles down the road, you have Ulverston, which has a Booths in as well. Around the top, so there's quite a high concentration of stores around Barrow and Furness and Ulverston. Again, at the top, you have with Carlisle, you have the major city within the county. You have all the large retail outlets as well, but people from Barrow wouldn't travel to Carlisle in order to experience the retail. They're much more likely to go to Lancaster. Actually, people from Barrow don't really like going anywhere, but certainly people from Ulverston, they go to Lancaster rather than to Carlisle. So it's an example of, because something looks close, there's only about 40 miles, it's a close rise between Ulverston and Carlisle. It takes you a lot longer than that to drive it, and it because there isn't decent transport infrastructure between the two. So what you have to bear in mind are not only the kind of physical aspects of it, but also the geographical constructs that are there as well. So just looking at customer demographics now would be a great place to look at is Intel, which groups people into around about 62 types of people. It's a great thing to have a look at. I really recommend that you look at this, and it groups. It is always interesting to see what group you fit in, but it tells you, it gives you a demographic overview of local populations, and it's really quite detailed, and you can see exactly what type of people, their kind of average earnings, the type of things they do, and how they spend their money. And that's what Acorn does, and it is very, very powerful indeed. What there also is an opportunity to do is look at delineating the trading area, particularly thinking about frequency with which people use it. And you can do that from key research. Now, using loyalty cards, what Tesco have done and Sainsbury's with their Nectar card, they've built up a huge database of what a population and how a population spends its money. And they can extrapolate that. So they can say the middle of Plymouth looks very much like the middle of Preston in terms of population makeup and ethnic mix, social economic groups, that type of thing. The two are very similar. So Plymouth and Preston are very similar. So what you can say is, okay, we have lots of data from Plymouth. We can use that to extrapolate to Preston. So we can say, because the populations look the same, statistically look the same, from a whole range of different measures, that their purchasing habits will be roughly the same. And that's what the huge database of loyalty cards enables you to do. There can also be primary research in terms of customer flow, and that can be, car registration, so monitoring how often a particular car goes into a certain area, for example. And also, you can always go down the route of actually asking people as well. There are a whole range of different formulae that you can have a look at to look at delineating trading areas, and this is just one that I've pulled out, the Hough's law of shopper attraction, and this really looks at the distance that they will travel against the square footage of the store, and also it takes into account the travel time as well. So if the square footage of the store selling space is large, IKEA for example, the travel time can actually be significantly greater than it, because it really becomes a destination within its own right. It also takes into account the number of existing shopping zones as well within that, and what's in the way. So it's a good thing to have a look at. I will be talking through this more in the seminar session, because it's obviously a bit detailed to go into here. Just thinking about evaluating other elements of choosing a retail trading area. Particularly this one, closeness to sources of supply. And I just want to take you back to this. It is very difficult, and it takes a long time to get from the motorway, which runs roughly down this line here, to any of these areas. It takes at least half an hour to get from the motorway to Ulverston. I know I do it most days. It takes a long time to get from the motorway to Whitehaven. So when you're thinking about, sources of supply, you need to build into all of that. How much is it actually going to cost to get products there within it? There are things to consider, such as the availability of labour, and generally speaking, most populations will welcome a new supermarket as being an opportunity to expand the local labour resources as well. But it may well be that, for example, in the Lake District in Cumbria, actually there isn't much land available that you can actually build on, because it's protected by various government instruments. National park legislation, for example. So that comes into regulations and planning issues, what's there. And also councils will often have a regulation on kind of how, because of traffic flow, for example, they will restrict the number of people that can, or the number of retail outlets that can be in one particular area, because it will attract too much traffic flow. So in terms of a timeline, a process line for analysing trade retail area, we start looking at social sources of initial data, and that will be over, generally analysing a local market. Then we'd look at the content of that. So all of that is the first thing we do. Then we'd look at how we'd go about delineating the trading area. How big is it going to be? Is it going to have a large catchment area or a small catchment area? What are the characteristics of the residents within that? What are the economic constraints within that area? What level of competition is there within there? And then from the proposal, you then make the decision onto it. And this is the process that I'd like you to go through for the exercise within it, and identify each of these different elements. So just to finish off very quickly on these, just a reminder about picking site selections, why you would choose one of these. So this is for the exercise, just consider why you would choose one of these. And also think about the type of retailer that you would go for. Think about how people will get there as well. So we've looked at location planning and site selection within it. And so for the seminar session, what I want you to do, and there will be more stuff within this, is for a start off, have a look at the other links that I haven't been onto, the Acorn, for example, which are very good. I want you to choose a location for a new convenience store in Lancaster and to justify your answers. So what I'm expecting you to do is go through this type of process. I'm expecting you to have a think about this type of site selection and what you would consider within it. So all of these different elements. So I will see you later on today, and have a good day.